When you try to get health, you are sick. When you try to get wealth, you are poor. When you try to get love, you are lonely. The very trying keeps you in the state opposite to what you desire. It is like a man drowning who struggles so violently that he prevents his own rescue. The harder he fights against the water, the more surely he sinks. But when he relaxes, when he stops fighting, when he allows himself to float, he discovers that the water that seemed his enemy becomes his support. I want you to understand something fundamental about the nature of reality. Everything that you could ever want already exists. Not in some far-off heaven, not in some distant future, but right here, right now, in this very moment. The infinite intelligence that creates and sustains this universe has already provided everything. Every desire that ever been born in the human heart has its corresponding fulfillment in the invisible realm of infinite possibility. But here is a mystery that has confounded humanity for centuries. These things exist in a dimension that can only be entered through feeling, through assumption, through the bold act of occupying the state of having rather than wanting. You cannot think your way into this dimension. You cannot work your way into it. You cannot struggle your way into it. You can only feel your way into it. Tonight I want to take you on a journey into the very heart of creation itself. I want to show you how the universe actually works, not as the material scientists would have you believe, with their theories of random chance and mechanical causation, but as it truly is, a universe of infinite imagination where consciousness is the only reality and everything else is merely its projection. Consider for a moment the nature of your own experience. Right now, as you sit here listening to these words, everything you are aware of exists within your consciousness. The sounds you hear, the sights you see, the thoughts you think, the feelings you feel, all of it is taking place within the theater of your own awareness. You never actually experience anything outside of your consciousness. You only experience your consciousness of things. This is not mere philosophy, my friends. This is the practical foundation upon which all manifestation rests. If consciousness is all that you ever experience, then consciousness must be the substance from which all experience is made. And if consciousness is the substance of experience, then by changing consciousness, you change experience. By changing the state of your consciousness, you change the world. Now, when I say stop trying to get it, I mean stop living in the consciousness of not having it. Stop affirming through your feelings that it is absent from your life. Stop approaching your desires from the outside, as if they were foreign to you, as if they belonged to someone else, as if they required permission from some external authority. Your desires are not foreign to you. They are not accidents or coincidences. They are the voice of your own deeper self calling you home to your true nature. Every desire is a prophecy of its own fulfillment. Every longing is a promise from the infinite that what you seek is seeking you. But the promise can only be fulfilled when you stop trying to grab it from the outside and instead learn to occupy it from within. Let me illustrate this with a story that will make clear the principle I am sharing with you. There was once a man who desperately wanted to be wealthy. Day and night he thought about money. He visualized having money. He affirmed that money was coming to him. He tried every technique he had ever heard of to attract wealth into his life. But the harder he tried, the more elusive wealth became. His very effort was pushing it away from him. One day, exhausted by his efforts and discouraged by his continued poverty, he decided to give up. He said to himself, I am tired of wanting. I am tired of trying. I am tired of being poor in my own mind. And in that moment of surrender, in that moment of ceasing to try, something extraordinary happened. He felt different. Not hopeful that wealth was coming, he felt wealthy. Not believing that he would have money, he felt like he had money. And from that moment of inner transformation, his outer world began to rearrange itself. Opportunities appeared that he had never noticed before. People offered him possibilities that had always been there, but which he had been too busy trying to see. Money began to flow to him through channels he had never imagined. And he realized that wealth had always been his, waiting for him to stop trying to set it and simply be it. This is the great secret, my friends. You don't get things. You become them. You don't attract conditions. You embody them. You don't manifest from emptiness. You manifest from fullness. And the fullness is already yours. It has always been yours. It is your birthright, your natural inheritance as a child of the infinite. But how do you stop trying? How do you cease the effort that seems so natural, so necessary, so obviously required? The answer lies in understanding what trying really is and what it does to your consciousness. Trying is always future tense. When you try to get something, you are affirming that you will have it someday, but not now. You are pushing your good into an imaginary tomorrow that never comes. Because when tomorrow arrives, it is always today. And if you are still trying, you are still pushing your good into the next tomorrow. Trying is also effortful. It involves strain, struggle, force. It comes from the belief that you must overcome resistance, that you must fight against opposing forces, that you must earn your good through hard work and dedication. But I tell you tonight that the universe requires no such payment. Your good comes not through effort, but through acceptance, not through struggle, but through surrender, not through trying, but through being. The moment you stop trying to get it, you create space for it to be. The moment you cease your efforts to attract it, you discover that it was never absent. The moment you quit pushing for it to happen, you realize that it has already happened in the one place where all happening truly occurs, in consciousness itself. Now I want to address those of you who are thinking, but Neville, if I don't try, if I don't work toward my goals, if I don't make an effort, how will anything ever change? How will I ever get what I want? This question reveals a fundamental misunderstanding about the nature of action and the source of all effective action. There are two kinds of action in this world. There is action that comes from trying, and there is action that comes from being. Action that comes from trying is forced, effortful, strained. It originates in the belief that you lack something and must go out and get it. This kind of action often produces the opposite of what you want because it is rooted in the consciousness of not having. But action that comes from being is natural, effortless, inspired. It flows from the consciousness of already having, of already being what you want to be. When you embody the state of your fulfilled desire, when you live in the feeling of having what you want, right action happens automatically. You don't have to figure out what to do. You don't have to force doors to open. You simply move as your fulfilled self would move, and the world rearranges itself to match your inner state. This is why I say stop trying to get it. Not because I want you to become passive or inactive, but because I want your action to flow from the right source. I want your doing to emerge from your being rather than from your lacking. I want your efforts to be the natural expression of your fulfillment rather than the desperate attempts of your emptiness. Let me share with you the technique that makes this possible, the method that allows you to transition from trying to being, from wanting to having, from seeking to finding. It is elegantly simple, which is why so many people overlook it in favor of more complicated approaches. Before you sleep each night, instead of trying to get what you want, assume that you already have it. Don't visualize yourself getting it. Don't imagine it coming to you in the future. Don't see yourself working toward it or struggling for it. Simply assume the feeling of having it now, in this moment, as a present reality. If you want health, don't try to get healthy. Feel healthy. If you want love, don't try to find love. Feel loved. If you want success, don't try to become successful. Feel successful. The feeling is the secret. And the feeling must be present tense. It must be now. It must be real in your experience, regardless of what your senses may be reporting. This is not pretending. This is not wishful thinking. This is not self-deception. This is the conscious use of the creative power that is your birthright as a human being. You are not pretending to have what you want. You are actually having it in the only place where having truly occurs, in consciousness. And consciousness, being the only reality, makes it real. The physical world that you see with your eyes is nothing more than consciousness made visible. It is the outpicturing of inner states, the externalization of internal conditions, the manifestation of mental emotional patterns. When you change the pattern within, the picture without must change to correspond. This is not a belief. This is not a hope. This is a law as reliable as the law of gravity. But here is where most people stumble. They try this approach for a few days or a few weeks, and when they don't see immediate external changes, they conclude that it doesn't work. They go back to trying, back to efforting, back to the old consciousness of lack and limitation. They don't understand that there is often a time interval between the inner change and its outer expression, just as there is a time interval between planting a seed and harvesting the crop. You must persist in the new state. You must continue to live in the feeling of having what you want, regardless of current circumstances, regardless of what others may say, regardless of how long it seems to be taking. Your persistence in the assumption creates the externalization. Your faithfulness to the inner reality births the outer manifestation. I have seen people transform their entire lives using this principle. I have watched the sick become well, the poor become prosperous, the lonely find love, the despairing discover joy. But in every case, the transformation began the moment they stopped trying to get what they wanted and started being what they wanted to be. There was a woman who came to me years ago, desperate to marry a particular man who seemed completely uninterested in her. She had tried everything she could think of to get his attention, to win his affection, to make him see her as a potential partner. The harder she tried, the further he seemed to move away from her. She was exhausted by her efforts and heartbroken by the lack of success. I told her what I'm telling you tonight: stop trying to get him, and you'll have him. Instead of trying to make him love you, assume that he already does. Instead of working to win his heart, live in the feeling that his heart is already yours. Instead of hoping for a future with him, dwell in the reality of being his beloved right now. At first she protested. She said, "But Neville, that's not true. He doesn't love me. We're not together. How can I feel like his beloved when the facts clearly show otherwise?" And I replied, "My dear, the facts are nothing more than the outpicturing of yesterday's assumptions. If you want different facts, you must make different assumptions. The assumption persistently maintained becomes the fact." She agreed to try this approach, though I could see she had doubts. But something wonderful happened. The moment she stopped trying to get his love and started living in the assumption of being loved by him, she began to change. She became more confident, more radiant, more attractive. She stopped the desperate behaviors that had been pushing him away. She started moving through the world as a woman who was deeply loved, and that inner state began to be reflected in her outer experience. Within 3 months, he had noticed a change in her and was drawn to her new energy. Within 6 months, he was pursuing her with the same intensity she had once pursued him. Within a year, they were married. But the marriage was not the result of her trying to get him. It was the natural expression of her assumption that she was already his beloved. This principle applies to every area of life because it is the fundamental principle of creation itself. You are always living in some assumption about yourself and your world. You are always occupying some state of consciousness. The question is not whether you will assume and embody a state. You are already doing that every moment of every day. The question is which state you will choose to occupy. Most people occupy states by default. They react to circumstances rather than creating them. They let their external environment determine their internal state rather than letting their internal state determine their external environment. They try to feel good when things go well instead of making things go well by feeling good first. But you can choose your state. You can select the consciousness you wish to occupy. You can decide which version of yourself you want to be. And when you make that choice and persist in it, the world has no option but to reflect it back to you. I want you to understand that this is not about positive thinking or optimistic attitudes. This is about occupying the consciousness of your desire fulfilled. There is a vast difference between thinking positively about what you want and actually feeling yourself to be in possession of it. Positive thinking often maintains the separation between you and your desire by keeping it in the category of something you hope for. But the assumption I'm teaching you tonight collapses that separation entirely when you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled. You are not hoping for it. wishing for it, or even believing it will come. You are experiencing it as a present reality in consciousness, and consciousness is the only reality there is. Everything else is merely its shadow, its reflection, its outer expression. This is why the Bible tells us to pray believing that we have already received what we ask for. Not that we will receive it, but that we have received it. The receiving happens first in consciousness, and then it appears in what we call the physical world. But consciousness is the real world. Everything else is just its projection. Now let me address those of you who are concerned about letting go of effort entirely. You may be thinking, if I stop trying, won't I become lazy? Won't I stop taking action? Won't I just sit around waiting for things to happen? These concerns reveal a misunderstanding about what it means to stop trying. When I tell you to stop trying to get what you want, I am not telling you to become passive or inactive. I am telling you to stop acting from the consciousness of lack and start acting from the consciousness of fulfillment. I am telling you to stop efforting from emptiness and start expressing from fullness. When you truly embody the state of having what you want, action becomes natural and inspired. You don't have to force yourself to do things. You don't have to push yourself to move forward. You simply find yourself naturally doing the things that someone in your desired state would do. The action flows from being rather than from trying. A person who truly feels wealthy doesn't have to try to make money. They naturally think and act in ways that create wealth. A person who truly feels healthy doesn't have to try to get well. They naturally make choices that support their health. A person who truly feels love doesn't have to try to find love. They naturally attract love by being lovable. This is the great paradox. When you stop trying to get it, you naturally do the things that bring it to you. When you cease the effort to attract it, you become attractive to it. When you quit pushing for it to happen, you align yourself with its natural flow into your experience. But remember, this alignment happens first within consciousness. The outer actions are secondary. They are the effect, not the cause. The cause is always the state of consciousness you choose to occupy, the assumption you choose to maintain, the feeling you choose to live in. Let me tell you about a man who understood this principle profoundly. He wanted to be a successful author, but he had been trying for years to get published with no success. He would write furiously, submit manuscripts everywhere, network tirelessly, and study the market obsessively. But the harder he tried, the more rejections he received. He was becoming bitter and discouraged. Then he heard about this principle of stopping the effort to get what you want. At first it seemed counterintuitive to him. How could he become a successful author without trying to become one? But he was desperate enough to experiment with a different approach. Instead of trying to become a successful author, he began to assume that he already was one. Instead of hoping for publication, he lived in the feeling of being published. Instead of working to achieve success, he embodied the consciousness of success already achieved. Something remarkable happened. As he lived in this assumption day after day, his writing began to change. It became more confident, more authentic, more powerful. He stopped writing what he thought publishers wanted and started writing what flowed naturally from his consciousness of being a successful author. He stopped submitting desperately to every possible outlet and started choosing opportunities that aligned with his inner state of success. Within 6 months, he had received his first acceptance. Within 2 years, he had published his first bestseller. But more importantly, he had become what he wanted to be in consciousness first, and the external success was simply the natural expression of that inner reality. This is how creation works, my friends. First the inner, then the outer. First the consciousness, then the condition. First the assumption, then the fact. You don't work your way into the consciousness of success. You assume the consciousness of success and then let it work its way into your experience. Now I want to address the role of desire itself in this process. Many of you have been taught that desire is somehow wrong or sinful, that wanting things is unspiritual, that you should be content with whatever you have. This teaching has created tremendous confusion and has kept countless people trapped in lives of limitation and lack. Your desires are not your enemies. They are your friends. They are the voice of your deeper self calling you to expand, to grow, to become more than you currently are. Every desire is a gift from the infinite, a promise of what is possible for you, a preview of your own potential coming into manifestation. But here is the key. Desire is meant to inform you about what you want, not to keep you in a state of wanting. Desire is meant to show you the direction of your expansion, not to become a permanent residence of longing and lack. Desire is meant to inspire your assumption, not to become a chronic condition of frustration. When you truly understand this principle, you begin to see desire differently. Instead of being tortured by your wants, you become grateful for them because they show you what you are meant to become. Instead of being frustrated by your longings, you use them as launching pads for new assumptions about yourself. The moment you desire something, you have been given the capacity to have it. The very fact that you can conceive of it means it exists in the realm of possibility for you. Your job is not to figure out how to get it, or when it will come, or whether you deserve it. Your job is simply to assume the feeling of having it and to persist in that assumption until it hardens into fact. This brings us to one of the most important aspects of this teaching, the question of time. Many people apply this principle for a short while and then abandon when they don't see immediate results. They don't understand that there is often what appears to be a time lag between the inner assumption and its outer manifestation. But I tell you that there is no real time lag. The manifestation happens instantly in consciousness, which is the only place where anything ever really happens. What we call the time lag is simply the period required for consciousness to reorganize the seemingly external world to match the inner pattern. Think of it this way. When you plant a seed in the ground, you don't dig it up every day to see if it's growing. You trust that the natural processes are at work, even though you can't see them. You water it, you give it sunlight, and you wait patiently for the visible growth to appear. The same principle applies to the seeds of assumption you plant in consciousness. Your assumptions are seeds planted in the fertile soil of infinite creativity. Your persistence in maintaining the assumption is the watering and feeding of that seed. Your faith in the process, regardless of current appearances, is the sunlight that allows it to grow. And just as surely as a planted seed will eventually break through the soil and become a visible plant, your assumption will eventually break through the current circumstances and become a visible fact. But you must persist. You must continue to water the seed with your assumption. You must continue to feed it with your feeling. You must continue to give it the sunlight of your faith. If you stop, if you dig up the seed by returning to the old consciousness of lack, you abort the process and must begin again. This is why I emphasize the importance of the state you assume before sleep. Sleep is the most creative time, when your conscious mind with all its doubts and arguments is quiet, when your subconscious mind is most receptive to impression, when the assumptions you maintain have the deepest impact on your consciousness. Make it your practice every single night without exception to assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled as you drift off to sleep. Don't analyze it, don't question it, don't wonder how it will come to pass. Simply feel yourself to be what you want to be, to have what you want to have, to live the life you want to live. Fall asleep in that assumption and let the creative forces of your own infinite nature work throughout the night to make it so. Many people try this for a few nights and then forget about it or get distracted by other techniques or methods. But I tell you that consistency is the key. Make this assumption every single night. Let it become as natural and automatic as breathing. Let it become your new way of being rather than something you do occasionally when you remember. As you persist in this practice, you will begin to notice changes in your waking consciousness. You will find yourself naturally thinking, feeling, and acting from the consciousness of your fulfilled desire. You will discover that you no longer need to try to be positive or optimistic, because positivity and optimism flow naturally from the consciousness of having what you want. You will also notice that your relationship with your current circumstances begins to change. Instead of being discouraged by what you don't yet see, you will be patient and confident because you know that the inner work has already been done. Instead of being anxious about the future, you will be peaceful in the present because you are already living in the consciousness of your fulfilled desire. This inner transformation is actually more important than the outer manifestation, though the outer manifestation will surely follow. You see, the real goal is not just to get what you want, but to become what you want to be. The real prize is not just the external condition, but the internal consciousness that creates and sustains all external conditions. When you learn to assume any state at will, when you discover that you can occupy any consciousness you choose, when you realize that you can become anything you desire to be simply the feeling or signing of being it, you have found the master key to life itself. You are no longer at the mercy of circumstances. You are the creator of circumstances. You are no longer the effect of conditions. You are the cause of conditions. This is your true nature, my friends. You are not a victim of the world. You are the creator of your world. You are not subject to forces outside yourself. You are the force that determines your own experience. You are not a beggar hoping for scraps from the table of life. You are the host of the feast, able to create whatever menu you desire. But to claim this power, you must stop trying to get it and simply be it. You must stop approaching it from the outside and start expressing it from within. You must stop seeking it in the future and start living it in the present. You must stop believing you need to become worthy and start knowing that you already are worthy of it simply by virtue of being able to conceive of it. As we come toward the close of our time together tonight, I want to leave you with a clear understanding of what this means for your daily life. Tomorrow morning when you wake up, you have a choice. You can wake up in the consciousness of wanting what you don't have. Or you can wake up in the consciousness of having what you want. You can spend your day trying to get what you desire, or you can spend your day what you desire. If you choose to be what you desire, if you choose to live in the assumption of your wish fulfilled, you will find that your entire day unfolds differently. The people you meet, the opportunities that present themselves, the ideas that come to you, the circumstances that arise, all of these will be different because you are different. You are no longer a person trying to get something. You are a person who has something. And having something creates very different experiences than wanting something. This transformation doesn't require years of study or complicated techniques or expensive courses or special initiations. It requires only your willingness to stop trying to get what you want and start being what you want to be. It requires only your decision to live in the assumption of your desire fulfilled rather than in the consciousness of your desire unfulfilled. The power to do this is yours right now. You don't need to develop it or earn it or deserve it. You already have it. You have always had it. It is your birthright as a conscious being. The only question is whether you will use it consciously and deliberately, or whether you will continue to use it unconsciously and by default. Every moment of every day you are assuming something about yourself and your world. You are occupying some state of consciousness. You are living in some feeling about your life. Right now, you can choose to make these assumptions consciously rather than unconsciously. You can choose to occupy the state you prefer rather than the state you have inherited. You can choose to live in the feeling of fulfillment rather than the feeling of lack. This choice is always available to you. No matter what has happened in your past, no matter what your current circumstances may be, no matter what others may think or say about you, you always have the power to assume a new state, to occupy a new consciousness, to live in a new feeling about yourself and your possibilities. The person who truly understands this teaching never again feels powerless. They may face challenges, they may encounter obstacles, they may go through difficult periods, but underneath it all they know that they have the power to create their experience through the consciousness they choose to maintain. They know that every situation is temporary and malleable, subject to change through the simple but powerful practice of assumption. This is the message I leave with you tonight. You already are what you want to be. You already have what you want to have. You already live the life you want to live. These things exist in consciousness, waiting for you to recognize them, to accept them, to assume them as true. Stop trying to get what you already have. Stop working to become what you already are. Stop struggling to achieve what is already achieved in the one place where all achievement occurs, in your own infinite consciousness. Take this truth home with you. Sleep in it tonight. Wake up in it tomorrow. Live in it every day. and watch as your world transforms to match the new consciousness you have chosen to embody. This is not just philosophy, my friends. This is not just positive thinking. This is the very mechanics of creation itself, the secret of secrets, the way the universe actually works. You came here tonight seeking an answer, and I have given you the answer. Not just an answer to your particular problem or desire, but the answer to all problems, the solution to all challenges, the key to all doors. Stop trying to get it, and you'll have it. Assume the feeling of having it. Persist in that assumption and watch as it becomes your living reality. The power is yours. The method is simple. The results are guaranteed. All that remains is for you to begin. In your world today, you've been conditioned to believe that effort, struggle, and constant striving are the pathways to your desires. The world teaches you to push harder, to fight more fiercely, to compete more intensely. But I tell you this, the very act of trying is the confession that you do not have. And as long as you are trying to get something, you are confirming its absence in your experience. Let me share with you a principle that I know to be true, not as theory, but as a law I have proven countless times. The more you try to get something, the more you push it away. This is the law of reverse effort, and it operates with mathematical precision in our universe. When you try to get something, you are automatically confessing that you don't have it, and what you confess you possess. I think about it for a moment. When you try to fall asleep, does sleep come? No, the harder you try, the more elusive sleep becomes. When you try to remember a name, does it come to you? No. It's only when you stop trying, when you relax your mind, that the name flows effortlessly into your consciousness. This is the secret I'm sharing with you tonight. Now let me take you to scripture, for the Bible is the greatest psychological document ever written. In the book of Matthew, it is written, "Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours." Notice carefully the tense used here. It doesn't say believe you will receive it, but believe that you have received it. This is the key to all manifestation. The great error of humanity is that they're trying to get what they already have. You are trying to become what you already are. The very moment you desire something, that which you desire already exists in what I call your imaginal act. It is already yours in the spiritual realm. And the spiritual realm is the cause, while the physical realm is but the effect. Let me share with you a personal experience. Years ago when I was in Barbados, I desired to go to America. Everyone told me it was impossible during wartime. The quota was small, and the waiting list was long. But I discovered this principle I'm sharing with you tonight. Instead of trying to get to America, I assumed I was already there. I lived in the end, in the feeling of already being in America. I walked the streets of New York in my imagination. I felt the cold winter air on my face. I saw the tall buildings. I lived from that state of consciousness. I did not try to get there. I lived as though I was already there. And then the most extraordinary series of events unfolded. A man I had never met facilitated my journey. And within months, I was standing on the very streets I had walked in my imagination. You see, the secret is not in the trying, but in the assuming of the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Now, let me show you how this principle operates in every area of your life, whether it's money, love, health, or success. The law remains the same. The moment you stop trying to get it and simply assume you have it, the entire universe reorganizes itself to make it so. But you must understand this is not positive thinking or wishful thinking. This is the law of consciousness. Consider this. Everything in your world is pushed out of your consciousness. Your consciousness is the only reality. When you try to get something, you are pushing out the consciousness of lack, of not having. But when you assume you already have it, when you live in the end, you push out the consciousness of possession, of having. Let me give you a technique I have taught to thousands, and it has never failed when properly applied. Instead of trying to get what you want, every night as you lay down to sleep, assume you already have it. Feel the naturalness of having it. Create a scene that implies the fulfillment of your desire. Feel the joy, the satisfaction, the completeness of possession. Then fall asleep in that state. You see, sleep is the state of consciousness where your subconscious mind is most receptive. As you fall asleep feeling you already have what you desire, you are impregnating your subconscious with the seed of fulfillment. And just as a seed must fall into the earth and die to its current form to be reborn as something greater, your conscious mind must fall into the sleep state while holding the feeling of fulfillment. This is what is meant in Scripture when it says, the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and planted in his field. Your desire, planted in the fertile soil of your subconscious mind through the feeling of fulfillment, must grow and manifest in your world. But remember, you must stop trying. Trying implies effort, and effort implies lack. Instead, live in the absolute assumption that what you desire is already yours. Feel its reality now. Experience the joy of possession now. Let every action, every word, every thought spring from the consciousness of already being what you want to be, having what you want to have. Many of you may be thinking, but Neville, how can I assume something is mine when my senses tell me otherwise? This is where the art of consciousness comes into play. Your physical senses show you the harvest of your previous assumptions. They show you the effects, not the cause. The cause lies in your consciousness, and that is where the change must take place. When you walk into your room at night, you don't try to get light. You simply flick the switch, assuming the light will come on. You don't stand there trying to make the light appear. You act with the absolute confidence that the light will respond to your action. This is how you must be with all your desires. Let me share another principle that few understand. The outside world is dead. It has no power to give you anything or take anything away. It is simply responding to your consciousness. When you try to change things on the outside without changing your consciousness, you are like someone trying to change their reflection in the mirror without changing their face. Your world is yourself pushed out. Every person, every circumstance, every event in your life is yourself pushed out. When you try to change them through effort, you are working on the reflection. But when you change your consciousness, when you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, the reflection must change. This is why Scripture tells us, be still and know that I am God. This stillness is not physical stillness, but the stillness of trying. It is the cessation of effort. It is the complete acceptance that what you desire is already yours. Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. Yet Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. This is not a lesson in laziness, but a profound spiritual truth. The lily doesn't try to grow. It grows by allowing the life force within it to express itself perfectly. You are that lily. Your desires are the perfect pattern of your unfolding. But when you try to force them into being, you interfere with the perfect pattern. You introduce struggle where there should be only allowance. Let me give you a practical exercise. Tonight, when you go home, take your desire, whatever it may be, and create a scene that would imply its fulfillment. Make it as natural as possible. If your desire is for a new home, feel yourself living in that home. Feel the texture of the furniture. Walk from room to room. Feel the joy of ownership. Then, and this is crucial, don't try to make it happen. Simply know that by feeling the reality of it, you have set in motion the law that must bring it into your physical experience. Remember, the feeling is the secret. Not the trying, not the effort, but the feeling. Feel as you would feel if your desire were already a physical fact. Persist in that feeling and watch how life rearranges itself to match your assumption. Now let me address something that often confuses people. They ask, but Neville, doesn't this mean we should do nothing? No, that's not what I'm teaching. Action will come, but it will be inspired action, not forced action. When you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you will be moved to take whatever action is necessary, but it will feel natural and effortless. Think of a composer writing music. He doesn't try to compose, he listens inwardly and records what he hears. Think of a great artist painting. They don't try to paint, they allow the image within to express itself through them. This is how you must be with your desires. The great secret is this: the feeling of the wish fulfilled is the very feeling that seals its fulfillment. The more you try to get it, the more you affirm its absence. But when you live in the end, when you possess it in consciousness, the trying ceases and the having begins. Let me share one more biblical reference that beautifully illustrates this principle. Before they call, I will answer, and while they are yet speaking, I will hear. This is telling you that the moment you desire something, it is already accomplished in consciousness. Your work is not to get it, but to accept it, to assume it, to live in the end. As we conclude tonight's discussion, I want you to grasp this fundamental truth. Everything you desire desires you. Everything you want wants you. But as long as you try to get it, you create resistance. The moment you assume you have it, all resistance dissolves. Tonight, dare to assume you are what you want to be. Dare to assume you have what you want to have. Don't try to make it happen. Know that it is already done. Live from that assumption and watch the miracle unfold. Remember, consciousness is the only reality. What you are conscious of being and having, you must become and have. The world is yourself pushed out. Change your concept of yourself, and you change your world. Stop trying to get it, and you'll have it. This is the law, and there is no other way under heaven by which anything is accomplished. The kingdom of heaven is within you, and all that you desire is already there, waiting for you to stop trying to get it and simply accept it as yours. Now, go in peace, knowing that what I have told you tonight is true. Apply this law, test it, prove it in the laboratory of daily life. For I tell you, with God, all things are possible. And God is your own wonderful human imagination. Many of you came to me after our previous discussions asking, but Neville, if I stop trying, won't everything fall apart? Let me tell you a story that will illuminate this principle further. There was a lady in my audience in New York who had been trying to sell her house for 2 years. She had listed it with countless agents, reduced the price repeatedly, and was constantly trying to make the sale happen. After hearing this principle, she did something remarkable. She went home that night and did what I'm teaching you. Instead of trying to sell the house, she assumed it was already sold. She sat in her favorite chair and constructed a scene implying the sale was completed. In her imagination, she held the check in her hands, feeling its crisp texture. She felt the joy and relief of the completed sale. Most importantly, she stopped trying to sell it. Within 1 week, a buyer appeared who purchased the house at her original asking price. You see, the lady's constant trying was her confession of not having, and therefore she could only reap the harvest of not having. The moment she assumed the completed state, the law of consciousness had to operate to bring it into her experience. Let me take you deeper into Scripture, for remember, the Bible is not telling the story of historical events, but is revealing eternal psychological truths. Consider the story of the Israelites trying to enter the Promised Land. For 40 years they wandered in the wilderness, trying to reach their destination. But it was only when they stopped trying, when they followed the instruction to stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, that the walls of Jericho fell and they entered their promised land. This is not just a historical account, it is your story. Your desire is your promised land, and your trying is your wilderness wandering. The walls of Jericho represent all the seeming obstacles between you and your desire. But these walls fall not by effort, but by assumption. Now, let me give you a practical technique that I call the Sabbath. In Scripture, God rested on the seventh day, not because he was tired, but because the work was done. This is your guide. When you properly assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you too must rest from your mental labor of trying to make it happen. This is your Sabbath. Every time you find yourself trying to make something happen, catch yourself and remember, the trying is a confession of absence. Instead, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and rest in that assumption. This is what it means to enter into his rest. Consider how you operate when you truly have something. When you have money in the bank, do you try to have it? No, you simply know it's there. When you are in your own home, do you try to be there? Of course not. You simply are there. This is how you must be with your desires. Let me share another principle that few understand. Your consciousness is God's gift to you, but what you do with it is your gift to God. When you try to get something, you are essentially telling God that his gift is incomplete, that something is missing. But when you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you are accepting the gift in its completeness. Many of you have asked me about taking action. Never you say, if I stop trying, should I stop doing? No, my dear friends, action will still occur. But it will be inspired action rather than desperate action. When you assume the state of the wish fulfilled, you will be moved to take whatever action is necessary, but it will feel natural and effortless. Think of a bird building its nest. It doesn't try to build, it simply follows its inner pattern. The action flows naturally from its state of consciousness. This is how your action should flow, not from trying, but from being. Here's a profound truth. The universe cannot give you what you want. It can only give you what you are. As long as you are trying to get something, you are being someone who lacks that thing. But when you assume the consciousness of having it, you become someone who has it, and the universe must respond accordingly. Let me give you another technique to apply this principle. I call it the morning watch. When you first wake up in the morning, before you engage with the world, take a few moments to establish the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Don't try to make your day good, assume it is good. Don't try to be successful. Assume you are successful. Start each day not by trying to get what you want, but by assuming you already have it. Remember the words of Scripture. Let the weak say, I am strong. Notice it doesn't say, let the weak try to become strong. This is the law of assumption in operation. You assume the state you desire to express, and that assumption persisted in will harden into fact. Consider your own experience. When you know something with absolute certainty, do you try to know it? No. The trying comes only with uncertainty. This is why I tell you, the feeling of certain of already having or being what you desire is the key to manifestation. Many of you are wondering about the time it takes for your assumption to become your physical reality. Remember, time is not a distance we travel. It is a bridge we cross in consciousness. The moment you fully assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you have crossed that bridge. What appears as time is simply the journey of that assumption through the dimensions of your world. Let me share another secret. The feeling of relief is one of the most powerful feelings you can cultivate. When you try to get something, you feel tension. But when you have something, you feel relief. This is why it's so important to capture and maintain the feeling of relief that comes with fulfillment. I've taught thousands of students, and those who succeed are invariably those who master this art of feeling relief instead of trying. They learn to live from the end instead of trying to reach the end. They understand that the end is where we begin, not where we arrive. Now, some of you might be thinking, but Neville, my desire seems so big, so impossible. Let me remind you of something. Size exists only in the world of effects, not in consciousness. In consciousness, the oak is not bigger than the acorn. They are the same thing in different states. Your desire, no matter how grand it seems, is not bigger than your capacity to assume its fulfillment. This is why Scripture tells us all things are possible to him that believeth. Notice it doesn't say to him that tries, but to him that believeth. Belief is not trying to believe. It is the feeling of knowing. When you know something, you don't try to know it. You simply know it. Let me tell you about one of my most remarkable students. She was a woman who had been deaf in one ear for over 40 years. Medical science had declared her condition permanent, but she understood this principle deeply. Instead of trying to hear, she assumed she was hearing perfectly. She didn't try to heal her ear. She simply lived from the assumption of perfect hearing. Within 2 months, her hearing was completely restored, baffling her doctors. This brings us to what I call the law of perpetual creation. Every moment of your life you are creating through your assumptions. When you try to get something, you are assuming you don't have it, and therefore creating more of not having it. This is why it's so crucial to master your assumptions. Here's a practical exercise I call the daily reset. 3 times each day, morning, noon, night, take a moment to reset your assumptions. Ask yourself, if I had what I desire, what would I be assuming right now? Then assume that. Don't try to make it true. Know that your assumption makes it true. Remember the biblical story of the prodigal son. Notice that the father didn't try to make his son return. He assumed the return in his heart. And that assumption drew the son home. This is how your consciousness works. It draws to you whatever you assume to be true. Let me share one more technique, the mirror method. When you look in the mirror, don't try to see what you want to see. Instead, assume you are seeing what you want to see. Your physical reflection may not change immediately, but persist in this assumption, and your reflection must conform to your consciousness. Now, some of you might be wondering about action. Remember this principle, right action flows naturally from right consciousness. When you assume the state of your wish fulfilled, you will be moved to take whatever action is necessary. But it will be inspired action, not desperate action. Consider how you act when you have something you once wanted. There's no trying, no forcing, no struggling. You simply act from the state of having it. This is how you should act now, from the assumption of already being or having what you desire. Let me address those of you who are impatient for results. Impatience is just another form of trying. When you truly assume something is yours, you become patient because you know it's already yours. The seed doesn't try to become a tree. It contains the tree and naturally becomes it. Here's what I call the Sabbath state. In this state, you rest from all trying because you know it is finished. This doesn't mean you become inactive. It means you act from the certainty of fulfillment rather than the uncertainty of trying to achieve. Remember, every time you find yourself trying, it's your signaling. Don't try to stop trying. That's more trying. Instead, simply assume the state where trying is unnecessary because you already have what you desire. As we conclude tonight, let me leave you with this final truth. You are not going to get what you want. You are going to get what you are. Therefore, instead of trying to get something, be the person who already has it. Live from that assumption and watch as your world reshapes itself to match your new state of consciousness. The practice is simple, but it requires vigilance. Watch your assumptions as carefully as you would watch your step in a dangerous place. Your assumptions are creating your future right now. Remember this principle of stop trying to get. You'll have it is not just a technique. It's a fundamental law of consciousness. It operates whether you believe in it or not, just as gravity operates whether you believe in it or not. Go forth now not to try but to assume, not to become but to be, not to get but to have. For in consciousness, where all creation takes place, what you assume as true is true, and what you believe you have, you have. And now, my dear friends, our discussion comes to a close. But remember, what you've heard tonight is not just information to be remembered. It's truth to be lived. Let every moment of trying become your reminder to assume. Let every appearance of lack become your opportunity to assume abundance. For in the end, it is not the trying, but the assuming that creates your world. And when you truly understand this, you will know the peace that comes from ceasing all trying and resting in the assumption of your wish fulfilled. Good night, and God bless you all.